Possibly my listeners and viewers will fault me a little bit for not taking more time to prepare. I made coffee, I made a little roster card. Keep my eye on the rice on the stove. I turned down the heat. But making the decision to make this tape, which is about the Kennedy assassination and Vladimir Putin, I feel strongly that what listeners I have are people who need time to their own counsel. And so, although there's an element of haste, it's in the hope of saving them some time to think because things are getting difficult for everybody. Now, in journalism, they get to the key point first. So I'll do that. When Kennedy was done in, Khrushchev was appalled. He was deeply saddened that forces beyond the control of John Kennedy and American government were able to switch things and seize power through such reprehensible means. Putin has, at least in word, agreed to cooperate with war crimes investigation. Most of us feel that's probably too much to hope, particularly in light of his understandable reluctance to engage in ICC, International Criminal Court, that won't do the same for the United States. I have heard, but have not verified, that Russia is more likely to conform to UN Security Council decisions that go against their will than America is. I think these things have to be praised honestly. I say that with a moment of silence for the deeply disturbing issue of civilian casualties in Ukraine. I would like that to stop. I would like a ceasefire and negotiated settlement. Beyond that, I realize there's going to be inhospitable circumstances for doing better in the future. Now, the key point I wanted to make is that Vladimir Putin's distrust of the West, irrespectively of whether you distrust him, which is understandable, his troops have complained that they were lied to, is itself understandable. As Khrushchev would have testified after JFK was murdered, how can we trust you when you murder your own president? Another side of the coin, of course, is that people who do their best to put their trust in change and progress are often cheated in their hopes. There's no clear evidence that Vladimir Putin participated in the decision to poison me in the mouth. I'll probably lose my teeth. It's not really getting better, it's just under control. Of course, there was a nerve agent used on me by American intelligence. And what they did, now I'm somebody who believes in The Fountainhead, the novel by Ayn Rand. Think clearly for yourself and do your best to be ungrudging when somebody teaches you something legitimate. Show your appreciation to your peers, but don't degrade your standards to suit them. I believe in the first principles of American modernism. And yet, because at the age of 9 years old, I was smart enough to see that the war in Vietnam was fascist, phony baloney, I was tortured. I was force fed a nerve agent. and I was poisoned in my mouth by pornographers from the U.S. Armed Forces who continue to bang on that I'm a communist. There's a lot of things I love about Russia. I've had to stop indulging them. I pulled some poems out of the newsletter that I was hoping to share, including one about Navalny, because it pertains to Russia. And I don't need these insinuations. But in light of that fact, that Putin's hesitancy to accept the demands to trust the West are completely understandable. I'd like to go into something closer to the body of this work, which has to do with certain elements of fixtures in my conscientious objection to the violence in our societies worldwide in light of amounting incredible climate change disaster that seeks not to alienate us from one another, but to bring us together in common cause. The world is saying, learn something from this and help each other. So the arguments that I anticipated from the Wispansky circle no doubt will fall into play. They will say, your special pleading for this idea of human rights and American modernism while asking other people to put aside their selfish behaviors and concerns. So let's start by you putting aside your selfish behaviors and concerns. Because if you don't, you're not setting an example for reconciliation. I do think that there's an element of cynicism in the way that's directed at me. It is as if to say that I did something wrong by saying you shouldn't do something wrong to me. And I don't believe that. So, I've walked people through the details of how I sided with people who were rejecting me. I could see why they wanted to until I discovered they had implanted a neuroplasm, which was causing the convulsive attempts to get acceptance that were leading to rejection. The so-called pushiness of wanting to be heard when I'm deaf and wanting to understand what people were saying, of wanting to have a love life with someone who I loved, not somebody who was hired by the corporations to molest me and make a joke of me. I could accept the explanations until I found out there was a neuroplasm. But instead of other people saying they no longer accept the explanations because they too have discovered a neuroplasm, they said, ha ha ha, that's right, so what? So using nerve agents on people is not cool. Now, Putin has said that he would cooperate with a war crimes investigation. I know from my research that JFK was killed by Axis forces, saying that America owed sacrifices before the spiritual Nuremberg caused by Hiroshima, and I'm being used for the same thing, as though in saying we shouldn't use nuclear bombs, I'm the one who used the bomb first. And it's anti-intellectual bedlam that comes from that. Not only did I not use the bomb first, but I know for a fact that the people who did use the bomb first were not really all of them aware of what it would do, how powerful it was, were concerned because by then they'd heard about the concentration camps and knew that at least this was a horror that could stop the war, give us a chance to make an assessment of things. I think the assessment went very badly when we threw in with domino theory. I think we should have given Korea and Russia half a chance in light of what they had faced and made a better impression on them than recruiting Nazis into our own Cold War establishment, which led to them poisoning a modernist, making me deaf, poisoning me in the mouth, calling me a communist for the things I like about Russia. Now people will say, you're just going to get Camilla Valieva in trouble by watching her. Vladimir Putin's just going to lash out at you. Biden has asked us to refrain from embrace of Russia. Well, that's not the only thing I'm saddened about. I was reading Mikhail Bakhtin, and I was in fact watching Putin and wondering what was going on with this seemingly very intelligent person. So, but I mean, all of that's off because of what's going on in Mariupol and so forth. I mean, that's just too much. I can't handle that at all. I can't handle that at all. I want to feed into it or rationalize it in any way. But they do have me on record as saying that I wonder if Chernobyl wasn't ultra high. I mean, I'm one of the few people who has seen evidence of ultra high and experienced evidence of ultra high myself. And living across the street from the girl who introduced me to Gail Burston, the authors of the script that I wonder if Chomsky knew about, the Texas school book itself. I also wonder if Andropov knew about it. I mean, the dude who I was living with, who when my father was killed by Donahue, the Green Party, had a dog that tore up my father's cashmere coat named Yuri. Just as Wadmaker had a dog named Tito. But I was living across the street from the girl who introduced me to Gail Burston, from the Soviet Jewish sect. And one of my lovers was Alla Shertok, which is like CHER. Sher is in the nuclear thing, silkwood, dill, wormwood were the letters. So there's some evidence that maybe it was encrypted by the forces even in Russia that Khrushchev couldn't control. I mean, I hate to trigger a wig out, but Putin is destroying Khrushchev's prize and gem, Kiev. I mean, so the idea that you can have something is capable of brainwave sonar, ultra high distance meltdowns, starting AIDS and COVID, and some teleportation jazz, and faking assassinations like Lennon from Pentagon Disney and the shooting of Reagan, which I also believe. I think that those are all implausible issues that fall into line with reasonable investigation in light of the evidence. Are things that I don't think that fantasy mongers or crazed haters should necessarily get front burner about. I'd say that it's an academic issue, but we're dealing with taboos of articulation. And certainly Russia is no great shakes when it comes to taboos put on putting out your point of view. Taboos about talking about the anthrax and 911 and Diagoras. I mean, Cliff Robertson went above the WTC to watch. If you do 3 hours of honest homework on Cliff Robertson, you get the whole picture about taking control of your TV sets. I mean, he was on the premiere of whatever that show was, Outer Limits, that was postponed for Kennedy's state funeral, and he played Kennedy in PT 109. And there are other things that have come out about Hitler's secret relationship behind the scenes with Reagan while he was making movies, but with the people who had first use of the Burning Cross. The Trumpy tune Putinese coalition that poisoned me in the mouth and stuff. Will say anything. They don't care anything. They tried to overthrow the U.S. Constitution after Trump was voted out. Does not give you a lot of confidence that Putin wouldn't melt down his own to create a alibi for monstrosities like COVID. So all those questions point to looking back and forth between points of view this, points of view that, and overthrowing the taboos. Now somebody's going to jump down the jumping hole or hold PPE wave magic wand and say you're encouraging them to believe share talk was indexed to Chernobyl and Sheriff Silkwood and justifying the people who shot Reagan so that you can frame Putin as a perpetrator. La 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 la. Fix your garble. Okay, get your garble carefully fixed on a piece of paper and allow it to exchange hands, as they say in Samizdat. So the parameters of the issue are relatively simple. The way to gain trust is for everybody to join the ICC and say, okay, the books are open on all this stuff, court is in session, and you have, I've testified that the Supreme Court, the woman who manipulated what happened to me as a child was named Ruth Hammer. We get Ruth Ginsburg chopping some woman in half with an elevator using ultra high right before she dies and stuff, and then Carrie, like the woman who poisoned me in the mouth, Carrie. It's like a scene from The Omen or Stephen King's Carrie, right? So we see, the chop half stuff that comes with, like I'm seeing it on my television screen and on the guy who stepped off the metro in Boston, chopped in half, right? So the Twilight Zone is taking control of your fake news for the Lamanono establishment and so forth. Get all this stuff on paper and go to the ICC and have a Nuremberg of people who just look at the evidence and say, well, let's see whether there's reasonable cause for this. And people surrender to the decision-making processes and take their courts in whatever country they live in and establish through their own processes that these people were found guilty in the ICC. It's our judgment that they should be arraigned under due processes of our own society for the purposes of prosecution and punishment. Now, somebody's going to say I'm committing espionage. What am I committing espionage about? I'm committing espionage about trying to protect my society from criminally insane mania. You look around here, this is my door right here, over here. See, I don't have any weapons. I'm Jim Curry. I live in Tacoma. I go out walking. You don't need me to tell you that Alice Showtalk was my neighbor and my passing lover. You don't need me. You can ask her or anybody who knew Sam at the time. You don't need Tom Hodge, me to tell you that Tom Hodge had a dog named Yuri that he and his friend Hagedorn gave my father's cashmere coat to tear up after my father passed away and had Donahue and the Green Party stamped on the back of his obituary. You can ask them. I'm not espionaging nobody. You can look up the letters and see that her name is Gail Carolyn Burson without any further ado. You don't need me to tell you. You can ask Penis Gabriel what he thinks. You know, so I mean, there's no question about espionage. You can communism. You say, oh, okay, okay, I get it. Ayn Rand was someone I admire for her communism. She spoke out against the use of children for slavery. That's communism. That's communism. Russia does that too. Oh, you don't want to do that. No, 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 don't do that because Pittsburgh will get menacing. Mm.